Good morning, students. Next one we are going to discuss about the fertilization. Okay, so what is fertilization? Okay, fertilization is the first one. What happens if the pollination, after completing the pollination, what happens, that stigma consisting the pollen grain. So what happens? First one, the pollen grains that produces the pollen tubes, that produces, in the picture you can see that first picture. In the first one, pollen grains is there. In the pollen grain that produces the pollen tube formation. Okay, so what happens when it gets when the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma, it wait for the suitable condition. So and then it absorbs the sugar and then water from the stigma and bulges. These pollen grains bulges and it forms the pollen tube. Okay, so these tube, in the picture you can see that this tube grows downwards through the stigma. Okay, from the stigma to, it grows downwards to the style, and then finally it reaches the ovary. This ovary that consisting the micropyle means small hole that is present in the ovary. Okay, so through the micropyle it enter into the ovule. Okay, so the nucleus of the pollen grains that divides by mitosis. Okay, so during the tube formation, what happens, the pollen grains divides by the mitosis and it forms the two male gametes. Okay, each pollen grain that consisting the two male gamete. Okay, so this matured male gamete is called as the male gametophyte. This ovule contains the egg cell inside the embryo sac. Okay, so the tip of the pollen grain after the tube, after entering into the ovary, that ruptures and discharges the two male gametes into the embryo sac. Okay, so what happens here, the fusion of male gamete and female gamete is called as the fertilization. Okay, so the fusion of pollen and egg is called as the fusion of male gamete and then female gamete is called as the fertilization. They will ask the question, what is fertilization? Fertilization is the fusion of male and female gamete, or fusion of pollen grain and egg is called as the fertilization. Okay, so then next one, sometime they will ask the question syngamy, isogamy and then anisogamy, we discussed that, and then syngamy. What is syngamy? Syngamy, of the two male gametes are present in the pollen tube. Okay, so one fuses with the egg to form the diploid zygote. This fusion is called as the syngamy. Okay, so the one gamete fuses with the egg to form the diploid zygote, that is called as this fusion is called as the syngamy. Okay, so this zygotes divides several times and forms the embryo. So another one male gamete is there. Okay, so these another male gamete fuses with secondary nucleus. Okay, another male gamete that fuses with a secondary nucleus, another one nucleus is there. Okay, so and it forms the endosperm. In the syngamy, one male gamete fuses with the egg and forms the diploid zygote. Here another one male gamete fuses with secondary nucleus and forms the endosperm or food storing tissue. Okay, so there will be a two fertilization is there. Okay, first fertilization form the diploid zygote, another one fertilization forms the endosperm. Okay, so this mechanism is known as the double fertilization. Okay, sometimes they will ask the question, what is fertilization, what is syngamy, what is a double fertilization. Okay, you need to write the answer. Okay, this fertilization takes place inside the female reproductive part. Okay, the zygote is formed, which later that grows into the embryo. So the next one is the seed formation. How the seed gets formed? How the seeds get formed? So normally following the fertilization, once the fertilization is completing, what happens? The sepals and then petals, style and then stigma degenerated are usually fall up. Okay, so after completing of the fertilization, it degenerates the sepals, petals, style and stigma. So what happens? The ovule develops into the seeds. Okay, normally the zygotes divides repeatedly to form the embryo. And then what happens within the ovule? The ovule that develops into the thick coat and it forms the seeds. Okay, it is gradually converted into the seeds. The embryo contains the tiny roots. Okay, normally you can see that the embryo contains the radicle and then plumule. What is radicle? The embryo contains the tiny, you can see in the picture, okay, the tiny plumule. The last picture, plumule radicle is there. The tiny root structure is called as the radicle, and then the future shoot is called as the plumule. Okay, radicle means root, r root, and then plumule means future shoot, and then cotyledons is there. Okay, plumule root development, radicle, and then shoot radicle is the root development, plumule is the shoot development. And then what is the main function of the cotyledon? The cotyledon contain the food reserves. It contains the food reserves. So the endosperm cell divides to form the endosperm or nutritive tissue, which supplies the food to the developing embryo. Once the embryo gets developed, so for that it gives the nutritive tissue or nutritive food. Okay, as the seed matures, it hardens and dries, enabling to survive in the environmental condition. Okay, so this food supply is enclosed by the seed coat. Okay, this cotyledon is the food reserves. Okay, so the next one is the ovary that develops into the fruits. What happens in the ovary? The whole ovary after fertilization that develops into the fruit. Okay, we are eating the fruit. That fruit comes from the ovary, and then seed is come from the ovule. Okay, so it is which protects or it enclosed by the seed. The ovary wall ripens and forms the pericarp of the fruit. Okay, finally the embryo lies dormant in the seed. Okay, so within the seed the embryo lies. When it gets the favorable condition, it gets germinated. Okay, so normally next one is the germination, last process, germination. A seed is the reproductive part of the plant which is capable of growing into the new plant. Okay, embryo in the seed is alive. Okay, normally embryo in the seed is alive. It will not germinate until it gets the suitable condition. When it gets the suitable condition, it germinated. Okay, so what are all the conditions is necessary for that? So it gets the three conditions is necessary for that. One is water, and then air. Normally air consisting the oxygen. Okay, it needs the oxygen, and then suitable temperature. Okay, these are all the conditions necessary to germinate the seeds. So when the seeds gets all these three conditions, it germinates. Okay, so this development of seedling from the seed, what happens? The radicle, first one, the radicle that grows, you can see that in the picture, the radicle that grows to form the root, and then the root of pushes down into the soil and then absorbing water and then mineral nutrients. Then the plumule grows into form the shoot system. When it come out of the ground, green leaves are developed from the cotyledons, and finally it grows into the new plant. Okay, so this is the germination of the plant. Okay, so the major significance of the fertilization is male and female gametes have the half number of the chromosome. During the fertilization, the gametes fuses to restore an original number of chromosome. Fertilization keeps the number of chromosome constant in a species. It brings two different lines of heredity together, and then it brings the variation in the offsprings. Okay, these are all the significance of the fertilization. Okay, so this is the sexual reproduction happens in the plants. Okay students, thank you.